is Successful, founder and CEO of the Minority Psychology Network, and this is Breaking the Stigma. I'm introducing my co-host, O'Neill.
This is the culture therapy, yo.
All right, so we're just gonna go ahead and get started. We have a super important topic that we're discussing. It's seasonal depression. Our guest today will give you some valuable information and definitely help you throughout this holiday season. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce themselves. We'll start with Janice.
Hi everyone, my name is Janice Castro. I am a doctoral student in the counseling psychology program at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Currently completing my clinical internship at Children's Institute in Los Angeles, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. We're so excited to have you. Eka?
Hi, my name is Eka Charles McTeer, and I am a board member of the Minority Psychology Network. I am a California registered associate marriage and family therapist, working towards licensure, and I'm happy to be here today.
All right, awesome. Okay, well, let's just jump right into it. So, what seasonal depression? And I'll ask this to you, Eka.
So, seasonal depression is a form of depression that comes when the seasons change, as you hear, and it can be for different seasons. It doesn't only have to be when we think of like winter, spring, summer, fall. It could just be a season or a period of time in your life in which you just feel, depression or feel sadness or feel some type of mood change. And it may come at the same time every year. It may come at the same time throughout the year at different time periods of your life. And so that's your season. Most times, though, when we do hear seasonal depression, it is like around the time the weather changes, daylight saving time, which also goes into then our holidays. So that's a big time of the year in which we might idealize thinking it's happiness, family oriented, and togetherness, but that also is a reminder for some people that they don't have those things. So it's a season of their time, a seasonal time in their life in which they feel more sadness, they might be irritable, sometimes we see the crime rate go up for, substance use and things like that. So that's just a tidbit of what seasonal depression could look like.
I do actually have a question, and you brought it up, of course, with family. It being the holidays, people are more closer together. It's interesting to see if there is a correlation between, seasonal depression and, your family being a trigger or just the certain holidays being a trigger for whatever reason. Have you ever had a client where, it actually their family was a trigger, being around their family, maybe there's a family member that they butt heads, or maybe it just reminds them of a certain thing that kind of allows for seasonal depression to kind of take over in the winter and kind of in the winter months?
For sure, especially working in the foster care system,
Yeah.
where kids were like, they had to get their passes or their visitations were, maybe monitored, or they were just on a tight schedule. That would always be a big trigger time for clients. For one, because there were clients who did get to go see their families, and then for two, there were clients who did not, or just didn't have family to even go see. So, and then when we would send our kids home, our clients home to be with their families, most times they would come right back to the group home, or didn't even, stay the duration of time that was allotted for them because their environment was still the same, and even if they were learning new tools on how to deal with things and not run away, it just wasn't the same at home. So they would say, hey, can you guys come back and pick us up or send us home? Or those who are on probation would say, hey, don't even give me a pass because I don't even want to go back to that. My family's going to trigger me, and then I'm going to relapse or, get myself in some type of trouble. So that was always something that's like a triggering time for people, as well as like birthdays, anniversaries, death anniversaries.
Oh, that's sad. Yeah.
You know what's so interesting, Eka and Janice? A lot of people may feel the seasonal depression symptoms, but don't really understand exactly what it is and not really educated on what seasonal depression looks like. So could you go over like the symptoms, Janice?
Sure. I think when it comes to seasonal depression, it's important to remember that, it falls under the category of a major depressive disorder. So it's going to look like your very typical depressive episode where people experience feeling sad, or you feel like you get tearful easily more than often, feeling tired or fatigued, feeling more irritable than usual, things that you used to enjoy, it's not as much fun for you anymore. People experience sleep difficulty, and that can look either you can't sleep as much as you used to, you have trouble falling asleep and staying asleep, or you're sleeping more than usual. Like maybe you're used to getting 7 hours of sleep a night, and all of a sudden you find yourself getting 9 to 10, and that's not typical for you. Difficulty concentrating, as well as getting cravings and eating more than like more sweets and starches, which then could lead to weight gain, feelings of hopelessness or despair, and even thoughts of suicide.
So question, Janice, would you classify somebody or diagnose somebody with clinical depression or MDD when their symptoms more lie with seasonal depression? Would you still say that they have MDD?
So, the way that we diagnose is based off our DSM, right? So it's
Right,
like a Bible for
right,
clinicians.
right.
And with seasonal depression, it's a specifier.
Okay.
So, for example, if you look at the DSM in the section of depressive disorders, you're going to find a lot of different types of depressive disorders. And major depressive disorder, also known as MDD, is
Mm-hmm.
one type of depression,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a disorder. Now, if that depression, those symptoms during your episodes only happen during a specific season in your life, and you're noticing that that keeps happening like
Oh, I see what you're
two,
saying.
three
Mm-hmm.
consecutive years,
Mm-hmm.
then that's where we can specify, okay, it's major depressive disorder specified with a seasonal pattern, which
Okay.
is seasonal affect disorder.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Cool.
Wow, that's really interesting. So, what would you say? How is COVID-19
Yeah.
affecting seasonal depression right now?
How is it not?
Really?
Facts.
Talk about it.
Facts.
I think COVID is now our fifth season of the year, so
Mm-hmm.
it's actually been a long season,
Mm-hmm.
of depression that I think people have experienced. And then now, here we are at the end of the year where those same people might already have that seasonal pattern of depression, and we're still in this phase of COVID of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And then even, now for some states, especially California, well, certain counties here now, we're back kind of where we were back in March and
Wow.
April, and
Mm-hmm.
almost like we never really left. So
Mm-hmm.
this is like on top of the seasons of it being the holidays and whatever people feel individually about that. Now it's like dealing with this,
Right.
and a lot of families have been affected by COVID, whether it's been directly or had a scare, or someone at work who had it and they had to be home for weeks because of that. It's just causing so much, like so much, mood change, and on top of that, unfortunately, our suicide rate has increased like
Mm-hmm.
dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
Where this is something we see more in the Midwest when the seasons change. Not that there isn't suicides that occur here on the West Coast, but in the Midwest, historically, that's where like the suicide rate is pretty high during this time of the year because of the weather and etc. But we're having a pretty big influx here too in California, and it's mind-boggling.
Well, as professionals, what would you guys say to people who are at risk with seasonal depression during this time, like, in the era of Zoom and era of, virtual calling and things like that, you can't really go out as much. What would you say maybe some exercises or some treatment options they could have that they can do on their own while we're kind of in this pseudo quarantine right now?
Brian, I think that's a great question. I think in dealing with seasonal depression, it's important, first and foremost, to speak with a mental health professional.
Right.
It is so helpful to have somebody on your side listening to you in a non judgmental way, who can help you figure out, is this seasonal affect disorder or is this something else? You
Mm-hmm.
know, is
Mm-hmm.
this just COVID?
Right. Right.
Is this because there's an anniversary coming up in my life and it just so
Yeah.
happens to be during the winter blues? So
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the main things. But obviously, as we know, there's a very big stigma with mental health.
Yeah.
And so it's easier said than done to seek out services and talk to a professional. And also take into consideration insurances, access to a culturally competent professional. That's hard for us people of color.
Mm-hmm.
So, other things that we can also do to help ourselves, especially if it's not impacting our functioning to a level of feeling like, that it's
Right.
debilitating,
Mm-hmm.
is I think trying to expose yourself outdoors as much as possible. Think about going out on walks. With a mask on for now.
Yes.
um, Also, that staying active is super important. I know we had a recent conversation with MPN about mental health and our physical health. Super important how the mind and body is connected, as
Mm-hmm.
well as eating healthy. So I mentioned earlier one of the symptoms is that there's an increase in wanting to eat sweets and starch, and so trying to make sure that you're eating healthier
Right.
foods,
Comfort foods.
and
Yeah.
trying to spend time with your friends and family. I
Mm-hmm.
know that's hard during COVID as well. So being able to spend quality time with people can be really hard. I know, for example, myself, I'm not going home for the holidays when it
Right.
comes to Thanksgiving. I'm just gonna stay back.
Right.
COVID's really scary, and so I'm trying to be more intentional about, like, okay, who's that one or two people in my circle that I feel like we trust each other to be healthy and spend time, even if it means just going on Zoom and having
Right.
some wine and
Right.
chatting.
That sounds cool.
Oh, and I was going to mention, sorry, you had something else to say. When you talk to a mental health professional, talk to them about light therapy. That's something that I had used
That was my next
when
question.
I was living in Nebraska,
Yeah.
because Nebraska has some cold, long
Oh
winters.
yeah.
And so that daily exposure to bright artificial light during the months of the depressive episode could be helpful. But like I said, just talking with a mental health professional about it, because there are some side effects to it. So you want to make sure that if you're doing it, that you're doing it with somebody being able to supervise that for you.
Okay. Excellent.
Oh, that's really good, Janice. That's, because a lot of people say, like, people on the East Coast and in the the states where it's really cold and they have like the tall buildings, like they're always so grumpy and have attitude.
New
So,
Yorkers.
Now, hey, now, I'm from the East Coast. I don't know about Southern
you can say it. But you know what they say. But yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. It really, really does. So thank you for that. I was going to ask you, is there like a population that maybe is more at risk than others? But it does make sense. States that are in, more colder weather, than they don't have as much sun as maybe the southern states. So,
That's right, that's right. So the risks vary depending on sex, age, and latitude. So unfortunately, as women, as females, have a higher rate of experiencing depression in general. And younger folks tend to develop a depressive episode, or start to experience a clinical depression. And by younger folks, I mean like once you're an adolescent in your 20s, it peaks.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like you mentioned, successful, I mean, you're on the right track. It's about where you live. So the more up north you live, um, then there's going to be higher rates of seasonal affect disorder. The more south, such as like folks who are out in Florida or Texas, maybe not so much because they do have exposure to more light. I don't know if Eka had anything to add to that.
No, just I do know there are some higher rates for men, especially in the Midwest too.
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's those rural areas where it's like really nothing to do, no
Mm.
city, and so there's been like research to show that there's pretty high um, rates of suicide for men there in the Midwest.
Is it true that though women experience mental health issues at a higher rate than men, men are more likely to commit suicide? That's
Yes,
wow.
and violently too.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I mean
Wow.
it's all
Of
unfortunate,
course.
but
Yeah.
that's where you see the more violent suicides. And I mean, usually it's a gun, like a gun wound.
Gun. Yeah.
But for women, those who do commit suicide or make attempts,
Mm-hmm.
it's more something more subtle,
Mm-hmm.
and it may have just been a cry for help,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it led to that, like a drug overdose
Mm-hmm.
or
Self harm.
something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some type of self harm that,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of some cases, I've even read that those things went unexpected. They weren't actually, trying to make the suicide, commit suicide,
Mm-hmm.
but it ended up being that way, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what are some ways to? I know Janice mentioned speaking to the therapist, having light therapy, but what are some ways to maybe talk to your kids about it or try to, have this conversation so they can be prepared because they go through things too, like having like the break during the school year, and now things are totally different because
Mm-hmm.
they're online. So, what do you guys suggest?
It's so interesting that you say that because when from the ages of like 12 on through probably my through college, every time of the year when it was time to go back to school, like I just had this feeling, and it was like I would be sad, and I couldn't really understand it because I love, like once Halloween came, which is Halloween and it's my sister's birthday, everything seemed to pick up because then it was like the holidays and things like that. But it was like right before or right after school would start, I would just be in this like funk, and I feel like that would also be the semester that I didn't do as well in school. And I just could not understand that until I think about maybe it was probably my senior year of college, to be honest. And I was just like, I think I have like some type of depression that comes at this time of the year. Like it literally comes at the time of the year. And I just thought maybe it was, I don't want to go back to school because I love the summer.
Right.
But
Right.
then it just seemed like I would be in a real funk, And in college, I was really scared because I wasn't at home, away from my family. And it was like every year I wanted to transfer. I wanted to come from Santa Barbara to UCLA. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. And then as time went on and then I got into this profession, I'm like, oh my goodness, like that is what I
Mm-hmm.
was dealing with. So um, I think that would definitely be something that I now know I can share with my child because I know what it is, I know what it looks like. And now, even now as an adult and as a parent, I'm very cognizant about it. Like when daylight saving time comes, just being mindful if I'm going to be outdoors or if I'm going to be indoors because
Mm-hmm.
now the time is changing and we don't have as much light throughout the day, and so just trying to find different ways to kind of keep my self upbeat to not get in that mood.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it comes even now. I'm like, oh, why do I feel this way? Um, and trying to experience, trying to really like talk myself through that experience.
Right. Right. Well, real quick, what would you guys suggest for someone that maybe not yourself, a relative or a best friend or something like that? Yeah, around this time it's difficult for them. What would you suggest? Someone who's not a medical, or a mental health professional, but how I could help my friend, how I could help my uncle, my auntie, my cousin, my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, whatever it may be, how I can get them connected, or how I can maybe, you know, help ease the situation that they're in during these times of their depressive kind of mood.
I think doing like mind stimulating things, like, sometimes when it's the holidays, we focus so much on shopping, spending money, buying gifts and things like
More
that.
material.
But
Mm-hmm.
maybe spending more time, like even if it's on the holiday or in between the holiday, to not put so much emphasis on it. Um, let's play card games. Like, we love to play cards in our family. So it's like, when we come over, like, let's play cards, you know, or let's play dominoes. Something that's like stimulating, or even doing like, you know, little cook-offs or different type of activities that you can do together, to kind of maybe help, you know, kind of uplift and be upbeat, and, you know, have music and tell stories and things about, you know, things like that. Because, you know, sometimes going outside is something that might be a trigger, you know, the smell of the air, no light, you know, just, you know, different things that happen outside environmentally that give you like triggers and reminders of maybe where you were once before that made you sad, or something that's just, you know, making you feel that way. So I think just more stimulating things, even games on our phone, or just something to kind of keep our mind just moving, as opposed to just sitting in a place. And not that journaling isn't still good, but I think sometimes when you have a certain type of depression and you're kind of still just sitting, you know, you can wallow in it. So then you need to do something more active. So even like working out.
Definitely. How can people learn more about seasonal depression?
Well, I think that to learn more about seasonal depression, it's important to talk about it, you know, just like we're doing right now. I think it's a matter of, you know, how Brian had asked, how do I help somebody I know who might be suffering from it? It takes courage to be vulnerable, but letting somebody know, like, hey, I'm feeling this way lately, you know, and then maybe the person you're talking to might actually be experiencing the same thing, but because of the shame that we have, and the stigma around mental health, we can feel like it, you know, we're being weak, and that now I can push through, I'll get over it. And I know I myself have been in those situations, especially when I've kept myself busy with school. I'm like, nah, let me just focus on school. I'm crying because I'm stressed. Let me just keep going. And it's like, if I reach out to a friend and tell them what I'm going through, then I think that'll help. And also taking into consideration that our friends can only do so much for us, right? Our loved ones want to be there for us. They're going to hear us out, but we don't want our relationships to get impacted in a way that we start venting to them every time we feel sad.
Right.
So then it's also a matter of trying to seek out help, and listening to podcasts like we have right now, to help validate and know you're not alone.
Right.
And if possible, trying to speak with a mental health professional.
Perfect. That was a perfect answer. Good job.
Oh, thank you.
Well, Brian, do you have anything else you want to add?
I'll be honest, no. I mean, this was really insightful. Obviously, you know, there's definitely a lot to learn in terms of people who just don't, like myself, you know, I'm not LPC, you know, I've worked at a clinic before, but there's certain things that we just don't know. And certain things that we might not see with our family members that might see like a behavior change that we don't know why. And then we just chalk it up to they got a chip on their shoulder, or they whoop and whoop. But there might be something wrong with them, you know, or not necessarily wrong, but they might be struggling through something. And so I love these kind of forums because it allows us to get more insight, more information about how to kind of maybe, you know, identify those things with the people that we love and within ourselves. So, you know, I appreciate Eka, Janice, I appreciate y'all coming on here. That's great. Successful.
Definitely. I feel the same way too. Like Janice said, having this conversation is really going to help put the education out there. A lot of people experience seasonal depression and don't even know it. Like Eka was sharing her story. Like they have no idea what it is or why I'm feeling this way. And it actually made me think about like the family holiday gatherings. We always have that one family member. So you never know. Like maybe that's one of the issues too as well. You know, they're feeling some holiday blues or seasonal depression. So I think this is definitely going to help a lot of people want to research more and find out exactly what seasonal depression looks like and how to get treatment for it. So thank you both for joining us today. This was awesome. A great conversation.
Great.